Before the story begins, take 1 second. Subscribe to the channel, because some confessions are too heavy to carry alone. And the ones I share here? They're real, raw, and unforgettable. I used to believe my life was perfect. Or maybe, I just needed to believe it was. From the outside, my life looked like something out of a magazine. A beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. White walls, soft curtains, sunlight spilling through wide glass windows. A kitchen that always smelled faintly of vanilla and coffee. A backyard pool so blue it looked unreal on summer afternoons. My daughter was thriving at university. Independent, smart, the kind of young woman people compliment you for raising. And my husband? He kissed me goodbye every morning like clockwork. Same routine. Same smile. Same see you tonight. It was stable. Safe. Predictable. And that was the problem. Because perfection is often just a story we tell ourselves so we don't have to ask dangerous questions. Like, why do I feel lonely in a full house? Why does my heart feel quiet? I didn't know what was missing. Not until that afternoon. It was hot. The kind of heavy summer day where even the air feels slow. I stood near the pool, staring into the water, watching sunlight ripple across the surface like moving glass. I leaned forward slightly and saw my reflection. But I wasn't alone in it. Behind me, blurred by water and light, was a figure. I turned. Lucas. My daughter's closest friend. He had been coming over for years. Study sessions. Projects. Movie nights. He was practically part of the furniture. But that day he wasn't background. He stood at the edge of the pool, water dripping from his shoulders, sunlight clinging to his skin. He ran a hand through his wet hair, not trying to be attractive. That's what made it worse. It was effortless. And I looked. A second too long. When his eyes met mine, he didn't look away. He smiled. Small. Knowing. And in that tiny moment, something unspoken passed between us, like a spark finding oxygen. I should have gone inside. I didn't. After that, the world felt sharper. I noticed things I never had before. The way he laughed, relaxed, unguarded. The way he moved through our house like he belonged. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me, just slightly different than when he spoke to others. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe I had only just allowed myself to see it. He started coming over more. Or maybe I just noticed more. Garage projects with my daughter. Music playing softly while they worked. His voice drifting through open windows. And every time I heard it, something in my chest responded. Not loudly, but undeniably. It happened in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic. No music swelling. No sudden silence. Just an ordinary afternoon. My daughter was out. I was chopping vegetables, the rhythmic sound of the knife grounding me. Lucas walked in to grab a drink. Casual. Familiar. He reached for a glass at the same moment I reached to move one aside. Our fingers brushed. Just skin. Just a second. But the air changed. It wasn't imagination. It was physical, like static before lightning. Sorry, he said quietly. But his eyes weren't apologizing. They're just nerves, I told myself after he left. Just loneliness playing tricks. That night, I sat by the pool long after dark, watching moonlight tremble across the water. My mind argued. My heart didn't. Days passed in glances that lasted a fraction too long. Moments where conversation paused, and something else filled the space. Then one evening, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when he appeared in the doorway. You work too much, he said. I laughed it off. That's just who I am. He stepped a little closer. Not enough to alarm. Enough to feel. Maybe someone should take care of you for once. The words weren't loud, but they landed deep. My breath caught, not because of what he said, but because of how long it had been since anyone had noticed I was tired. Before I could respond, my daughter walked in. The moment shattered. But something had already changed. And we both knew it. It wasn't just attraction. That's what scared me. It was the feeling of being seen. Of someone looking at me not as a mother, not as a wife, not as the woman who keeps everything running, but as a woman. Alive. Desired. Present. That kind of attention is dangerous when you've forgotten what it feels like. And one afternoon, Sitting on the porch with a glass of iced tea, everything came to a head. My daughter had gone out. Lucas sat beside me. "You seem different lately," he said quietly. I stared ahead, just thinking. He leaned in slightly. "If there's anything I can do." He didn't finish. He didn't need to, because in that unfinished sentence was choice, and need, and loneliness, and hunger, not physical, but emotional. The hunger to feel something again. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, but permanently. Because some doors don't swing open. They give way. And once they do, nothing stays the same. After that afternoon on the porch, silence became dangerous. Not loud silence. The quiet kind that hums beneath everything. Lucas didn't come closer. He didn't need to. Because now the distance between us felt charged. Like standing near a live wire you pretend not to see. That evening my husband came home, kissed my cheek, asked about dinner. Same routine. Same smile. But for the first time in years, I felt like an actor in my own life. I laughed when I was supposed to. Nodded at the right moments. Inside, something had already shifted. The next few days, I avoided being alone with Lucas. Stayed busy. Ran errands. Cleaned things that weren't dirty. But avoidance doesn't erase awareness. It sharpens it. Then came the moment I knew I was already in too deep. My daughter asked if Lucas could stay for dinner. They were working on a project. I said yes too quickly. I told myself it was normal. Harmless. But the truth? I wanted to feel that electricity again. Just to prove to myself it was real. At the table, conversation flowed easily. My husband joked. My daughter laughed. Lucas barely looked at me. And somehow that hurt more. Because now I noticed his absence. That's when I realized. This wasn't about him. It was about what he had awakened in me. A week later, a storm rolled in, sudden, heavy rain pounding against the windows. The power flickered once. My daughter had gone to stay with a friend to study. My husband was working late. Lucas had stopped by earlier to drop something off for her. The rain came too fast for him to leave. We stood in the kitchen, thunder shaking the glass. "So," he said quietly, hands in his pockets, "this is awkward." I should have agreed. Should have told him to sit in the living room. Keep distance. Instead I said, "Yeah, it is." But neither of us moved. The storm filled the silence, loud enough to hide what we weren't saying. "You ever feel like your life just paused somewhere?" he asked suddenly. The question hit too close. Every day. I admitted before I could stop myself. His eyes met mine, not playful now. Not flirty. Understanding. And that was the real danger. He stepped closer. Not touching. Just near enough that I could feel warmth. "I see you," he said softly. 3 words. That's all it took. Years of routine. Of being needed but not noticed. Of being appreciated but not felt. My eyes burned. And that's when the line disappeared. Not in a dramatic rush. Not in passion. But in a quiet, aching moment where loneliness met recognition. And I let myself fall into it. The storm passed. But the calm afterward felt wrong. Too still. Lucas left not long after, neither of us speaking much. No promises. No plans. Just a shared understanding that something irreversible had happened. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked alive. And ashamed. Both at once. Guilt is strange. It doesn't scream at first. It whispers. At breakfast with my husband. During phone calls with my daughter. In the quiet moments before sleep. Lucas stopped coming over as often. When he did, we avoided being alone. Conversations became careful. But the damage wasn't undone. Because the real betrayal wasn't physical. It was emotional. I had stepped outside my marriage long before that storm. I just hadn't admitted it. The turning point didn't come from drama. It came from my daughter. One evening, she sat beside me on the couch, head on my shoulder like she used to as a child. "You're my favorite person," she said absent-mindedly while scrolling her phone. Something inside me broke. Not from desire. From clarity. I had been so desperate to feel seen. I almost destroyed the people who truly saw me all along. Love isn't always exciting. Sometimes it's quiet. Steady. Imperfect. But it's real. And I had risked it for a feeling I didn't fully understand. The next time Lucas came by, I met him outside before he reached the door. We can't, I said. He nodded, like he'd been expecting it. This shouldn't have happened. No, he agreed. No angef. No drama. Just acceptance. Some connections exist only to show us what's missing, not to stay. He walked away. And that was the last time we were alone. I didn't confess. I didn't blow up my life. Instead, I did the harder thing. I faced the emptiness in my marriage. The parts of myself I had ignored. The loneliness I had buried under routine. I started talking. Really talking. To my husband. To myself. Not about Lucas. About us. About the years we stopped noticing each other. Healing wasn't instant. Trust with myself took time. But slowly life felt real again. Not perfect, but honest. Because sometimes the most dangerous affairs aren't about love. They're about the parts of ourselves we forgot existed. And once you find those parts again, you have to choose whether to lose your life or rebuild it. Some confessions don't end with explosions, just quiet decisions that change everything. If this story made you feel something, don't forget to subscribe. More real stories are waiting.